Good morning, children. Here I am with a new video of History, chapter number 9, Women, Caste and Reforms. Indian society during the 18th century was divided along gender and caste lines. Women were not allowed to study and were married off while they were still very young. Widows could not remarry. Women did not have the right to inherit property. Their social position was very low and they were dependent on the man in their family. Caste restrictions were also very strict. The upper caste people stayed away from the lower caste. To fight these evils, enlightened Indians formed reform associations in different parts of the country, especially in Bengal, Maharashtra, and South India. Improving the position of women was the main agenda before the reformers. They believed that no reform could be effective until the position of women was improved. Many social evils hindered the process of upliftment of women. These social evils were the practice of widow burning or sati, the pitiable condition of widows, lack of education among girls, child marriages, female infanticide, that is the practice of killing a girl soon after birth, polygamy, that is the practice of having more than one wife, and parda system. A reformist trend started in India during the first half of the 19th century. The reformers realized that many social evils and superstitions had kept the society backward and prevented Indians from progress. Some enlightened Indians formed associations to work for reforms. In 1828, Raja Ram Mohan Roy founded the Brahmo Sabha, later called Brahmo Samaj, in Calcutta to work for social and religious reforms. The custom of sati was the most barbaric social evil of the time. In this, a widow was burnt alive on the funeral pyre of her husband. The most vocal opponent of this practice was Raja Ram Mohan Roy. He launched a campaign against it. His persistent efforts yielded results and sati was declared illegal in 1829. In the 19th century, the condition of widows was pitiable. They were not allowed to remarry, nor could they attend family and community functions because their presence at such happy occasions was considered inauspicious. Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar launched a crusade for the betterment of the widows. He also wanted that widows should be allowed to remarry if they want. His efforts led to the passing of the Hindu Widows Remarriage Act in 1856, which permitted widow remarriage. By the second half of the 19th century, the movement in favor of widow remarriage spread to other parts of the country. In the Telugu-speaking areas of the Madras Presidency, Veer Salingam Pentulu formed an association for widow remarriage. Around the same time, young intellectuals and reformers in Bombay pledged themselves to working for the same cause. In the north, Swami Dayanand Saraswati, who founded the reform association called Arya Samaj, also supported widow remarriage. Yet, the number of widows who actually remarried remained low. Those who married were not easily accepted. Many of the reformers felt that education for girls was necessary in order to improve the condition of women. Vidyasagar in Calcutta and many other reformers in Bombay set up schools for girls. When the first schools were opened in the mid-19th century, many people were afraid of them. They feared that school would take girls away from home, prevent them from doing their domestic duties. Moreover, girls had to travel through public places in order to reach school. Many people felt that this would have a corrupting influence on them. They felt that girls should stay away from public spaces. Therefore, throughout the 19th century, most educated women were taught at home by liberal fathers or husbands. Sometimes, women taught themselves. In the later part of the century, schools for girls were established by the Arya Samaj in Punjab and Jyoti Rao Phule in Maharashtra. In aristocratic Muslim households in North India, women learned to read the Quran in Arabic. They were taught by women who came home to teach. Some reformers, such as Mumtaz Ali, reinterpreted verses from the Quran to argue for women's education. From the early 20th century, Muslim women like Begums of Bhopal played a notable role in promoting education among women. They founded a primary school for girls at Aligarh. Another remarkable woman, Begum Ruqayya Sakhawat Hussain, started school for Muslim girls in Patna and Calcutta. She was a fearless critic of conservative ideas, arguing that religious leaders of every faith accorded an inferior place to women. By the 1880s, Indian women began to enter universities. Some of them trained to be doctors, some became teachers. Many women began to write and publish their critical views on the place of women in society. Tarabai Shinde, a woman educated at home at Pune, has published a book, Stree Purush Tulna. Pandita Ramabai, a great scholar of Sanskrit, felt that Hinduism was oppressive towards women and wrote a book about the miserable lives of upper caste Hindu women. She founded a widow's home at Pune to provide shelter to widows who had been treated badly by their husbands' relatives. Here, women were trained so that they could support themselves economically. Needless to say, all this more than alarmed the Orthodox. For instance, many Hindu nationalists felt that Hindu women were adopting Western ways and that this would corrupt Hindu culture and erode family values. Orthodox Muslims were also worried about the impact of these changes. As you can see, by the end of the 19th century, women themselves were actively working for reform. They wrote books, edited magazines, founded schools and training centers, and set up women associations. From the early 20th century, they formed political pressure groups to push through laws for female suffrage. In the 20th century, leaders such as Jawaharlal Nehru and Subhash Chandra Bose lent their support to demand for greater equality to women. So children, this is all for today. We will discuss more about this chapter in the next video. Till then, goodbye.